Hi, I'm Sarah Day. I'm a member of the Acres team. And if you're new to Acres, it's a land research platform that streamlines the process of finding and evaluating land. We're on a mission to make buying and selling land common, transparent, and easy, whether you are an industry professional or buying land for the first time. So this is actually the first in a series where we're going to talk to land brokers on different topics around land values. So today we're starting off with what can bring down a property value for rural land. We're here with our friend Jake Hofer, who is a land broker, landowner, host of the Land Podcast, and principal owner of Exodus Outdoor Gear. Quite the list. So Jake, if you could just start off telling us kind of about the region you work in and what type of land you specialize in, I think that would help add some context to this conversation as well.
Yeah, for sure. First off, thanks for having me on here. Excited to dive into all of this. And yeah, my name's Jake Hofer. I'm licensed in North Central Illinois, primarily deal with recreational land, tillable, and then some rural properties. It's kind of my key focus. Been licensed for 7 years, and it's been really fun. And I'm excited for this topic. There's a lot of interesting things that can go into valuing a property, and maybe why a low listing is not a great deal. And I'm sure we'll get into all of that. But first off, just thanks for having me.
Awesome. Absolutely. We always enjoy hosting. So we'll start off with this question. In today's rural land market, are there any trends you've noticed that could negatively impact a property?
Yeah, I mean, there's a laundry list of things that go into valuing a piece of property. I think something that's interesting with land is with houses, you have square footage, you have the finishes that are in it, and then you have the school district or the subdivision that it's in. And land has some parallels with that, but there's a lot of things that are drastically different. And so what we're seeing today is a lot of different things here. So windmills first came here, I don't know, 15, 20 years ago now. And now we're starting to see solar farms pop up depending on where they're at and in coordination with transmission lines. And that would be one thing that could potentially negatively impact a property if you're the adjoining or the one right next to it that maybe doesn't have the potential to put in some of those high income earning potential fixtures on a parcel. And so that's just one little thing that could impact a property's value. Another thing is if the land floods. So I use Acres to look at the floodplain maps, a very quick and easy way to understand if this property is going to get wet, because a lot of times you're slave to the listing before doing due diligence. And so that might not be on there. And it's really important to look and see if the property can get wet, because that's going to drastically impact the value. It's going to impact on what you can do on the parcel. It's going to impact the row crop production. And if it's in a floodplain, you want to build a house or a cabin, you want to insure it, you're going to have to get flood insurance, which is federally mandated. So there's so many things that go into it that can really limit the items there of what can be done and the potential value of it. And so those are some of the key things to initially think. I mean, there's a laundry list of things, but that's a really good basis of looking at the surrounding area and then thinking what the ideal buyer is going to want to do on it. And if it's limited, it's going to impact the value.
For sure. Yeah, land gets really complex.
Yes.
So that kind of leads into the next question. What are some of the big red flags when it comes to property value for rural land that buyers should watch out for, and sellers when they're thinking about putting their land up for sale?
Yeah, for sure. There's a wide spectrum of different land professionals out there. There's people who are really, that's their focus. People like me that live and breathe land every single day and are really tuned in. And then there's a lot of agents that will maybe take a listing that isn't really familiar with land. And I think that is sometimes not necessarily a red flag, but you need to have a little bit more due diligence in mind when you're trying to navigate that listing. And so I would say some of the red flags, almost any listing here in the Midwest, if there's big trees on it, they say mature marketable timber. And the timber market is just as complex. And so to look through these different things and read those different buzzwords and get an expert in there that can verify those buzzwords are accurate if that is important to you. So for instance, trophy hunting. Find someone that can tell you, yeah, that neighborhood is excellent for deer hunting, or maybe they'll candidly say it's okay, but I wouldn't say it's excellent. And getting some experts in your corner that can help you navigate these buzzwords that get thrown around. And if you're buying it for the reason of a buzzword and it doesn't have that and you buy it, there's going to be a level of buyer's remorse. So I think it's really important to read through all those different buzzwords, verify if they're accurate or not. And I would say that would be one of the biggest red flags. And then if I had to boil it down, I would say that it's like, make sure you're buying what you think you're buying.
Awesome. Yeah, that's really good advice because ultimately that is marketing language in the listing. So you want to look at it pretty carefully. So when it comes to factors that could negatively impact a property value, what are some of the easiest things a landowner can fix or avoid altogether?
Yeah, fortunately or unfortunately, a lot of people lack imagination when they see a raw piece of ground. I was just on a parcel last week that was pretty neglected. It had a lot of really good attributes to the farm, but there was some junk, there was some down stuff, and I mean, obviously, that's going to impact the property value. However, with an excavation company to come in for a couple of days, that place is going to look completely different. And so I would say the biggest thing and easiest thing to overcome is a little bit of equipment work can go a long way on a lot of these parcels. You can get rid of some of those old fallen down buildings that have been neglected for decades. You can add a trail system. Let's say it's really hard to navigate and you can't really hike around and you feel like you're bushwhacking all the way around the place. A trail system, cleaning it up, is some of the easiest things to do. And putting up a gate to control access into the parcel is a really easy way just to force instant equity, make the property more enjoyable for yourself, and just fixing the obvious issues that most farms have in some capacity, whether it's erosion issues or all these different things. So figure out what you can fix, what's the course of action to fix it, and the potential cost. Put that into your equation of purchasing it. And the things you can't fix, understand that and make sure they're not deal breakers.
Nice. Okay. So next, I want to talk about how neighboring land can negatively impact value.
Yeah. So I would draw this parallel back to residential homes. So there's good neighborhoods, there's less savory neighborhoods for a variety of different reasons, and rural land is no different. And so I think the biggest thing is understanding what you plan on buying that parcel for, and does that neighborhood have similar goals or at least neutral goals to what you do. And having a property in a bad neighborhood with problematic neighbors and disputes and all these different things, it's going to hinder the ability to resell the parcel. So let's say you overlook those things, you buy it and you think it's not that big of a deal. And then you buy it, you find out that it is a big deal and it is a pain. Because ultimately, anyone that's buying rural land, it's for it's for enjoyment in a lot of ways. Obviously, there's the investment aspect of it, but if you buy something in a bad neighborhood that's taking away the enjoyment factor, then to me that's really important, and it can certainly impact the value of a neighborhood. And I think the other thing too is, let's say let's say you're in an area that is, you just want to go there, you want to camp, or you want to hike, you just want to enjoy peace and quiet. And let's say that neighborhood is never going to offer peace and quiet. It's going to impact the value. So I think it's just looking at it holistically and just drawing it similar to when you're looking at a house and you see the house next to you, like, would I want them as neighbors? I don't know. I mean, it's the buyer's decision. And I have no dog in this fight, but just ask yourself that question. And I think it is important. And then inversely, if you get into a great neighborhood, that's awesome. And people will pay more to be in a good neighborhood. And same thing, people will pay more to be in a good school district. So it's the same ideology that transfers into rural land.
Gotcha. That makes a lot of sense. Um, so can you share some experiences you've had where something unexpected brought down the value of a rural land investment?
Yeah. So I remember this. This was 2 Februarys ago, and I saw a listing come live in kind of in my neck of the woods, and I thought it was priced really well. And I went and walked it right away. And I'm walking this parcel, and it's in an area that I had sold some property before, and it's a very industrious zone, is the best way to describe it. And as I'm walking this parcel, it kind of got this eerie feeling that this land has more stories to tell than what I could tell initially. And so, not to bore anyone with it, but I walked on the top of this hill, and there was switchgrass on this whole spine of this ridge system, which is a native grass and often can be used in remediation for different things like EPA. And so I did some additional research, and it was actually an old zinc mine a long time ago, and it was in a Superfund area. And so, an EPA Superfund area, for anyone that doesn't know, because I didn't a few years ago, it's a program that basically remediates an area, and this area they had to remove like 6 inches of topsoil in this whole neighborhood. And so we don't know if there was remediation on this piece. So that would be an example of, it's still sold below market, but it directly impacted the value because that study that was published by the EPA said you couldn't eat a turkey that was shot on that parcel, or you shouldn't eat the squirrels. You should limit the amount of venison you eat from the game you kill on there. So that is where doing a lot of homework and understanding what you're getting into is key. And it ended up selling, and I'm sure the people are happy with it for their own goals, but it directly impacted that parcel. I would say it probably sold for 30%, maybe 25% less than what it would have otherwise. So that's kind of a really unique story. There's not a ton of EPA Superfund zones, but to buy a house in that area, you have to the seller has to sign a waiver and the buyer has to sign a waiver that like this is an at-risk zone. There are potential health complications by living in this area. So it's very spelled out. And obviously that's going to impact the value.
That's pretty crazy. It sounds like there are definitely a lot of elements to consider with land, and it goes a whole lot deeper than the things you just see on the surface. So what are some examples of resources you may use or tools you use to help evaluate a property you're considering?
Yeah. I mean, I use a pile of tools. In this instance, I had to use the EPA site to navigate what that is and dive into the specific reports of that area. And that farm was ground zero. I think it was literally called ground zero. It's like the first of mine. And so like being really resourceful and looking through all these different areas that are online. I mean, you can get a lot from a Google search, but honestly, most of the time I'm going to acres, I'm pulling up the historical imagery, I'm filtering through the last 10 years cumulatively and getting an idea of what the history is of that farm in one place and really quick. And so I think that's a excellent starting point. And then if you have more questions, dive deeper and start figuring out, okay, so this is a good starting point, and then figure out what else you need to figure out. And maybe you need to make some phone calls to other local experts, or I mean, there's just so many resources once you start dialing the phone and talking to different people.
That's awesome. Always happy to hear when someone uses acres. But, around here, we are very passionate about making sure people also know they should reach out to experts like you who understand land real estate and can help them make informed decisions. So definitely just the starting point, the tip of the iceberg.
Yeah, absolutely.
Cool. Well, that wraps up this little mini interview. I hope you find it helpful. If you have more questions, feel free to reach out and we can consider them for future interviews. And stick around for the next one.